What's going on, everybody? We got to talk about week 6 of college football because a lot of things definitely happen. So let's get right to it. We're going to kick it off today with Ohio State versus Maryland. You know, it's kind of hard watching Ohio State struggle through certain things at times. Ohio State came out in this 4-2-5 defense that they just need to get out of. If they plan on running this against Penn State and or Michigan, we're going to have a long day and it's going to be a bad one. Maryland came in and they were running all over this defense with this 4-2-5 defense. I get Ohio State wants to have a lot of speed on the field. Worst case scenario, go to a 3-3-5 defense, so at least you have three linebackers, but you also have to realize 3-3-5 defenses are really weak to the run. So maybe a 4-3, have a DB in there or a free safety who's big enough to play the linebacker position but still has the speed. But just having that 4-2-5 defense is really putting this defense in a lot of hurt. It's just putting them in danger far too much. And if Maryland can do this, I'm really scared to know, like I said, what Penn State or Michigan can do. The Buckeyes needed the defense to really kickstart the game with the first score. That was also really another big problem in this game. That Maryland defense was confusing Ohio State quite a lot. They actually came out in a 3-3-5, and then every now and then they would put down a fourth lineman. And at this point, they were still getting to the quarterback for sacks. What that tells me is that there's a bunch of coverage sacks. Obviously, on TV, we can only see so much of the screen, and then they have to show the replay for what happened. But I'll show you guys some video on that. Kyle McCord to Marvin Harrison, it took too long to develop. I'm not exactly sure what was going on. There was a couple passes that he threw to Marvin Harrison, especially the one that went like 48 yards down the field. If he threw that ball earlier, it's a touchdown. If you don't have the arm to put the ball more than 40 yards in the air, which is fine, you have to throw that ball early. Marvin Harrison's going to go get it anyway. Just give it enough air for him to run under it. We've seen it many times, and we know he has the speed. He was clocked at 22 miles an hour in a game before. Speed is not the worry. Give him a chance to run under the ball and get away from the defender and score you a touchdown, but don't wait until it's too late, then throw the ball. And he has to stop and come back for it. Now, one big thing, a lot of people really want to blame the Buckeyes for this, and I can't blame the players. I kind of have to be honest with myself and kind of start looking at coaching here. Ryan Day takes a long time to open up his playbook, and this has been a staple for Ryan Day. I'm not exactly sure why, but he really likes the slow start. They come into games like against Maryland where you have the better team, so you can just wait until the end. Kind of like what Georgia has been doing all season. They're making games out of what we know should not be games. Go in there and dominate. Let your fan base know that you are serious about this. Build the confidence of your team up during the game instead of making it so close that the whole stadium is absolutely quiet. The score is really close, and then you have to close it out in a meaningful way for anyone to care. There's different ways you can go about doing this, but Georgia and Ohio State have been really staples of just making games out of what should not be a game. So Ryan Day is waiting until the second quarter to really open up the playbook. In the second quarter, 2 plays from their own 12-yard line, they are into the Maryland 10-yard line. So you're telling me they could not do this the whole entire first quarter also? Where has this call playing been? And why are we just trying to game manage just to see what plays will work or not? In practice what plays will work or not. You know exactly what your team is capable of doing. And you also know what your team is capable of doing to the other defense. Why is it taking so long to get there? Get Kyle McCord the time he needs to build some confidence with success, then go to your game plan if you want to later on. But if you're going to make Kyle McCord get a little bit shaky in there to the point where the whole crowd is questioning his skill, I think Kyle McCord is good enough. I think a lot of people are really questioning him in the wrong way because I think the coaches are putting him in these bad positions. I don't think it's his fault. He's not the one calling the plays at the end of the day. You guys have to realize that. The coaches are. And in this case, I think it's Ryan Day calling most of the plays. So Kyle McCord needs time to build his confidence. And then as his confidence comes in, everything else will work out. That'll also give Devin Brown more game time, more experience and stuff like that. But they're not doing that right now, So you have the better team, but you have to have your QB still in a confident state to be able to play. Make the defense rethink everything. Sometimes Maryland was dropping back 8 people and still getting to the quarterback for a sack. That's a coverage sack. When your quarterback starts to get sacked, the field starts to look a little different. But then again, you're not really calling plays to give him the comfort to come back and say, you know what, I know we got this. We'll figure this out. But if you want your quarterback to show up, get him confident first. But all of these pointless slow starts, I'm not quite understanding between Ohio State and Georgia. I would say for Ohio State, this game actually started 3 minutes with 3 minutes left in the second quarter, just about. And then comes the intentional grounding. Not a good call at all for the screenplay with no receiver in the area. That kind of ruined the flow a little bit. But also the run game for Ohio State, forgive me when I say it's non-existent. The offense slowed down and had to kick a field goal. I'm really curious as to what the problem with the run game actually is. Is it really the O-line that has to improve this much? Is it coaching that's not teaching the O-line what to do or how to get better? I really don't know. This is Ohio State. This is the cream of the crop. This is the top of the mountain. And I don't know if I've ever seen an O-line this bad at Ohio State in its history. I don't think this has ever happened where the run game is just non-existent. So I really am curious as to what is actually going on over there. This 4-2-5 defense, Maryland was just opening up the middle of the field. They know they have man-to-man coverage. Maryland coaches, however, did not catch this. Because Ohio State was in man-to-man for the most part, all they had to really do was notice during the game, and I'm not sure how the guys upstairs didn't catch this, but run seam routes up the middle of the field, it would have been wide open. The safeties were gone. And also do some crossing routes across the field. There's nobody in the middle of the field, But the coaches have to catch that. I'm not exactly sure why they did not take advantage of what Ohio State was giving them. Somebody has to catch that and call that out. That'll give you the momentum going into halftime. But once again, this is a big miss from the Maryland coaches. But then again, maybe it was not part of the game plan coming in. Maybe they didn't think that they could throw those crossing routes and those seam routes to open up the middle of the field. But sadly, Ohio State gave them the middle of the field the whole game. They just didn't take advantage of it. Maryland's Tagovailoa, he made one big mental mistake before halftime. 12 seconds left. The ball cannot be thrown shorter than the sticks because, the clock won't stop. Worst case scenario, throw the ball out of bounds. There's no punishment for that. You've got, a free 15-yard penalty from Ohio State putting you on their 18-yard line. Minimum, you have to come out with 3 points. Take advantage of what Ohio State is giving you. But throwing the ball short and then running out of time threw off the entire momentum for Maryland going into halftime there. So you see what happens when the game comes around in the second half. For some reason, the play calling got a lot better. Kyle McCord's confidence was boosted from the play calling that Ohio State was giving him. And we knew what to look forward to for the rest of the game. We knew now that Ohio State had control of the game. They won the game very easily in the second half. Even Coach Day said he wasn't happy with how the first half truly went. And once again, the issues are this becomes a big habit when it comes to coaching. Because the problem is, in these games that you should win, this is not a problem. But in the playoff games where you should win but spend too much time being far too passive, is for me where this becomes a problem. And that's where I have a problem with the Ohio State coaching at the moment. Everyone blames the players. Once again, I know I keep reiterating that, but I don't blame the players. These coaches are not putting the players in the best position to win. Earlier, the 4-2-5 defense was mentioned quite a lot by me. And now we have to look at the offensive play calling. It's kind of cocky in a way. You have the better team. So there is no threat of the game getting away from you in this situation until you come into the big playoff games or you got to play Penn State or Michigan. I personally think Michigan's the best team in the country right now. The main problem I think I see in the coaching is the play calling is far too conservative. The defensive positioning is far too weak. Go to a 4-3 if you want to have four down linemen. That's perfectly fine. You can do that. And use your third linebacker as a DB, but he plays as a linebacker. So you got to have someone that can tackle. Give your team the build of confidence very early on in the game. If you give your team early confidence in the game, the defense will play better. It keeps the momentum of the game going your way. It puts pressure on the other side. But when you try to get conservative with the play calling most of the game, you end up with a game like this against Maryland. We know you have the better team, and if you just play your game, you will win. But for some reason, you want to live on the edge of possibly losing if you make too many mistakes. Just play your game. All right, well, we're going to move on to some other things, not just the Ohio State-Maryland game. But, it's also time for the big three dogs in the Big Ten basically to self-annihilate. Something has to happen, okay? Penn State will play Ohio State. Ohio State will play Michigan. Michigan will play both Penn State and Ohio State. So this is kind of the annihilation for the Big Ten. And also, the annihilation for the Pac-12 is amongst us pretty soon. So USC will have to play Washington. Washington will play Oregon. Oregon will play USC, and on and on. You get the point. All these three teams in these two conferences will have to self-annihilate, and only one team is going to come out. So this is going to be tough. And I'm not going to lie. As an Ohio State fan myself, I am a little bit scared of this Penn State and definitely terrified of this Michigan game. I'm not very excited for these to come up on the schedule. But I digress. So let's move on to Texas and Oklahoma. Now, I think this was probably the game of the day and a really good defensive game. Texas started to look alive in the second quarter. What a 4th and 2 touchdown play. Great call on that. 9 minutes, 27 seconds left on the second quarter. Oklahoma could have walked into the end zone to end the half, but the ball is dropped. Oh, that was a really bad one. In the fourth quarter, with 15 seconds left, what a mistake by Texas to give up the touchdown. No one covered Nick Anderson in the last play for that touchdown, so I think that was a really big mistake, and that's what cost them the game ultimately. And now let's move on to another one. What happened to Notre Dame? Now, listen, these guys are still college athletes. So the number one thing we have to realize is most of these guys are just getting done with midterms. Losing to Ohio State was a close one, and that was a last-minute loss. But Louisville shut them down. And I'm not really fully sure if I fully understand this, but this is the hardest stretch on their schedule, and they really had to survive. Duke definitely had to survive Louisville, which they did not, but then they get USC next week. That's a rough one, and I really hope these guys can recover from this at home. I don't know if this team is actually good enough to beat USC because USC's offense can really score, but, this coming Saturday is amongst us, and we will definitely find out what these guys are made of. When it comes to USC, now I think they have one of the toughest schedules out there right now. Next week, they have to go to Notre Dame. Then they got Utah. 2 weeks later, they play Washington, a team that nobody wants to play because they can equally score just like USC. And you better come out and score fast. And then right after, they have Oregon. Once again, Oregon is a team that starts fast and they can score. This one will definitely be a scoring battle, just like the Washington game. But how much will be left in the tank after Notre Dame and then Washington, and then you have to play Oregon? That's asking a lot. This is a tough stretch on USC's schedule, and I cannot wait to find out what will happen. But what's the funniest thing this year is this is the last year for the Pac-12, and I honestly do think right now speaking, the Pac-12 is the best conference at the moment, with those three teams being mentioned, USC, Washington, Oregon. Yes, you have Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan here, but, like I said, the self-annihilation will happen in the Big Ten and as well as in the Pac-12. So we'll find out who actually lives these games. And keeping in mind, Washington, USC, and Oregon will all be in the Big Ten next year. So this looks quite scary for how good the Big Ten is pointed out to be next year. Thank God we'll have 8 teams in the playoffs and then 12 teams the year after. But This will be tough, you know? So, if USC survives Washington, then Oregon, Notre Dame, is there an argument for Caleb Williams to get a second Heisman Trophy? Tell me what you guys think, and we'll definitely look into that. And you guys have a good day. Thanks very much for listening. Talk to you guys later. Peace out.